Let's get started.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to Elevating Beyond with a 2-word mission statement: change lives. And I am here with the one and only, well, first of all, before I got the honor to see Scott Dickens here speak. Did I already butcher that?
Yeah, Dikkers. It's okay.
You guys know,
Everybody says that.
99.8% of the time I screw up. I could be sitting here with George Bush or Donald Trump right now and be like, Donald Trump? Anyway, story of my life, but Dikkers.
And you keep that in.
Oh yeah, we're not editing it out.
Good for you. That's great.
People are used to it.
I appreciate that.
I think if I did it right,
it'd be fake if you did it perfectly.
if they'd be like, wait, this show's not, something's going on. Mark didn't screw the name up.
Right.
So yeah, that's pretty much how every show starts. I just screw the name up.
Okay.
We don't do any, no. But Dickens. I'm thinking of like the movie, the
Charles Dickens?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So
I'm here with Charles
It's not a common
Dickens.
name. Dikkers is a very uncommon name.
Scott Dikkers, but not I don't even know how to say that. An incredibly amazing man from what he has done over the years. And I got to see you speak, and we're going to be talking about tons of things. The founder of The Onion, which it has over 30 books, multiple New York Times bestsellers.
Yeah.
One of them right here, Outrageous Marketing, which just came out. Will get more
That's
into
the
that.
latest book, yeah.
And like The Onion, by the way, when I found out Scott was going to be on, I think we talked a while ago through, we had the same speaking coach at a point. And she was telling me all these awesome things about you.
I called you to get a reference on her.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So Mary, you should, I need my kickback. But I started looking into The Onion more as you were going to be on. I had heard about it, but honestly I was like, all right, let me check this out. I just started looking, everyone, like if you haven't heard of The Onion, you probably have, but it's freaking hilarious. I couldn't believe, just on like Twitter, there was like 12 million people following it. Just on Instagram, it was like 2 million, and so much interaction, and that's not even the actual online. So that's millions, and it's like is it like the largest comedy online news magazine in the US?
I know it was the first humor site online.
Yeah.
And it's probably the biggest, probably like the most, I don't know if you can quantify this, the most prestigious online humor. Because there are things that'll pop up, I don't know how they do it, out of China or whatever, and suddenly they have like 1 billion followers. Like 9gag is a thing.
Yeah.
It's just huge. I don't know how they got huge. They're doing a lot of, user-generated content and a lot of video and a lot of memes, and aggregation and stuff like that. The Onion is all original content.
Yeah.
So probably in terms of original content that isn't user-generated, I'm sure it's the biggest.
Yeah.
And millions on social media following us. And part of it is like, The Onion produces content, and I'm not involved anymore, so I'll slip sometimes and I'll say we, because I've been involved with The Onion for so many years.
Well, yeah, you're one of the founders.
And I still think of it as like my puppy.
It is.
And my child that is now grown up and is doing well. But I left
That's an interesting thing
for the final time about 4 years ago.
Okay. And you started it?
I started it back in 88.
88.
Yeah, with a couple of really smart UW-Madison students.
Yeah. Another 20-year overnight success, right?
Another 20-year overnight success. But it generates so much original material every week that responds to the news.
Yeah.
And like responds to the news cycle with humor, but it also does original content that doesn't respond to the news cycle. That's just like the zeitgeist, whatever the writers are thinking about.
Yeah.
They'll just put out something goofy that they think is funny. And The Onion's been doing it for 30 years. And all that content is online. So when you go to The Onion and you start reading stuff, they'll say, you might like this article, you might like this article. There's a depth of humor there that you're not going to find anywhere else.
It's great.
It's just
it makes fun of everything.
Sinkhole that you can get into.
It's hilarious.
And then The Onion just started this other humor website called Clickhole, which people might have heard of.
And there's videos and stuff too?
Oh yeah, they have videos, they do great. That's more of a BuzzFeed parody.
Okay.
The Onion is more of a newspaper parody.
Yeah.
USA Today type parody. And so Clickhole is a little wackier and a little sillier, and that's a rabbit hole. You can get down that too.
Yeah.
And then for a while they were doing Patriot Hole,
Yeah.
which was like a parody of a sort of Alec Jones BuzzFeed world.
Okay.
A lot of fun. Just really good stuff
Yeah.
those guys are doing over there.
Yeah.
And we can get into this, but after I left The Onion the last time, I've left several times.
Yeah.
And then I often go back. But the last time I left, I started teaching at the Second City, teaching people how to write comedy based on this book that I had written called How to Write Funny. And a lot of the people that went through my courses, they came to me with no comedy experience, much like the people I hired at The Onion over the years. We never hired people with experience, always complete rank amateurs, because we wanted a blank slate, to mold the way we wanted. But people have taken my classes and they've gone on to work for The Onion, and a former student is the editor of Clickhole.
Yeah.
And a lot of former students are working at The Onion as writers and
That's
freelancers
awesome.
and video people and stuff like that. So I still very much feel like I have a lot of influence.
Yeah,
at The Onion, even though I'm
yeah.
not officially involved.
Yeah. Well, it's your baby. It's grown.
Very much so.
It's
Always
growing
will.
up. That's going to be an interesting thing I want to talk about later, is that transition of anything you create, any business, going through the baby, teenage,
It's my favorite part of
to
being
where
an
you are
entrepreneur.
able to then.
Is where you do this.
Yeah.
It's my favorite part.
Yeah.
It's just beautiful. It's a wonderful thing.
It's got to be like a combination of feelings of like.
It's just like a parent
Yeah.
dropping their kid off at college.
I
It's
guess like
exactly
after a
the same.
certain amount of time, it's like, all right,
You're ready.
it's time now.
Fly.
Yeah.
I just love that.
That's really cool.
Yeah, sweet.
But when you would bring people on, if they didn't have experience, they had passion for. Did they know about what you were doing, and they like
Absolutely.
had a passion for. So like they were interested and they were like creatives in a way, but they didn't have like art experience or something, or illustration or comedy, but they were like, I love this.
Most of
I want
them
to be a part of it.
Yeah, most of them were compelled to create
Yeah.
before they came to The Onion. So they did their own comic strip, and they might have done a comic strip for like their college newspaper.
Okay.
A ton of Onion writers were college cartoonists.
Okay.
And some of them wrote. They would write funny things in their diaries, or they wrote a funny column in their high school newspaper or something like that. And they were just like, the best writers write.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
they're just going to find a way to write somehow or other.
That's right.
And so when they would come to us, they would see The Onion distributed on the street. And I'm talking way back before the internet,
Yeah.
when The Onion was just a free newspaper in Madison, Wisconsin.
Yeah, yeah.
And people would see it on the street, and they would come and offer to write for us. And they would submit articles and cartoons. And yeah, you can spot people. Like I would look for people like me who were just like obsessed with comedy, obsessed
Yeah.
with trying to make funny stuff,
Yeah.
who had a unique voice, who were really smart and funny and interesting. And we threw all those people together and built this team of just amazingly talented people. And there wasn't a lot of turnover for like 20 years. So like in The Onion's formative years, from 88 to about 2008,
Yeah.
it was almost exactly the same staff.
Really?
Very little turnover, yeah.
Wow.
And now there's been a little bit more turnover, but there's like the editor-in-chief, Chad Knackers. I brought him on as an assistant graphics guy in 97, I want to say.
Yeah.
So he's an old-timer. And Todd Hansen, who was started, I think, in year 2 or 3, who was head writer for many years, he's still involved.
Yeah.
And
That's
so Tim Harrod, who came on really early, I think in the mid-90s, he's still involved.
Wow.
Yeah, so it really is an amazing process to bring those people in and see them grow as writers.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
once you're part of a system like The Onion, where you have to generate content, there's a deadline, all their natural ability that they developed and their natural compulsion to write is channeled into like a very professional environment. And they build their skills so beautifully, and they get to be masters of satire.
That's
Wonderful
true.
to see. A lot of them have gone off to write books and work for TV.
Yeah.
It's been really satisfying to see.
And I remember yesterday when you did your keynote at the college, you were talking about like growing up, you were inspired a lot by like Mad Magazine which I could see because there was something I just recently saw that it made me think of the garbage. Did you have Garbage Pail Kids cards at all growing
No,
up?
I never had those.
Do you
I had
remember
I had wacky packages.
Like Luke Puke and stuff like that?
No, I had wacky packages.
Oh, okay.
Which were like Mad parody. At least I thought they were associated with Mad Magazine. If they weren't, they were very similar.
Okay.
They were just parodies of products. And they had fake names that were parody names, like Milkbone dog biscuits.
Yeah.
Would be like Milk Phone or some stupid thing. And you know what I mean? And they were like well made, well drawn. They had good verisimilitude, and they were stickers. And you collect these cards and pull the sticker off, and you can stick them places.
Yeah.
And as a 12-year-old, I just thought that was the coolest thing. And I collected them all, and they were very funny.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I never got into the Garbage Pail Kids.
Oh, it was. You would think it was.
It was later. I think it's now that you mention it. Tim Harrod was really into those, and he collected those and knew about them.
Yeah, it was like in the '80s, I think.
Yeah. No, that's more his generation. I'm a little older than he is.
Yeah. I was born in '79, so garbage. Because I found some old ones. I'm like, man, I wish I would have saved them.
Yeah,
they
wacky
were
packages
hilarious.
were like mid-70s.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. But I mean, I remember I'd have Mad Magazine because I remember at the last page where you could fold it.
The fold-in.
And it would make that picture out of the picture.
Yep.
That was always like, I'd be in the gas station when I couldn't buy it sometimes and fold it. I get
yeah,
yelled
you'd pick
at.
it up on the newsstand and you could some kids had already folded the fold-in.
That was so cool.
Yeah,
So I wonder how
loved
many
Mad
people
Magazine.
listening don't. If you don't know what that is, you have to check that out too. The folding.
And it's sad because Mad is gone now. They went to Quarterly and they're stopping now. But they were a real institution.
Yeah.
In American comedy for a long time. They don't get a lot of cred because early, when they were founded in the 50s, they were more of a subversive, like underground comics type of thing.
Yeah.
But then they
they started all the way in the 50s. I didn't know that.
They immediately started doing more kids humor and targeting like 13, 14-year-old kids. A lot of booger humor, barf humor, stuff like that, parodies. And as a 12, 13-year-old, I thought it was the greatest thing in the world.
It's perfect.
And yeah, I had a subscription, and I copied the art in Mad to learn how to be a cartoonist, and copied the writing to learn how to write jokes. It was really valuable for me.
That made you could see where there's a lot of influence off that, and then I think it's great. Then you like get your influence, and then you do your own. You put your own self into it and create your own thing.
That's how the best artists start, and I think Picasso said that, like the best artists steal or whatever.
Yeah,
and I think
call it borrowing.
Well, the way I see it is when you're starting and when you're a kid, and you copy Don Martin from Mad Magazine, you're doing it exactly like Don Martin. You're just tracing.
You're learning.
And you're learning. It's like you're learning from a master. And then if you kept doing that, that would be kind of pathetic.
Yeah.
You develop your own style and your own look, and it's going to be heavily influenced by what came before you. Every artist is.
That's right.
And once you find that confidence and comfort in your own voice, then you're sailing, you know? And The Onion is obviously its own voice, different from Mad Magazine completely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
With some similarities, though, because Mad Magazine would do these beautiful parodies, and the Lampoon, too, to be fair.
I was just thinking of that, too, because I watched that documentary lately.
I was too young for that.
Yeah.
So I never got into the Lampoon, but I've studied it since, obviously.
Yeah.
And they really raised the bar on parody. The whole idea of Mad Magazine parodies were kind of playful and obviously fake, but the Lampoon made parodies so real that it looked like they were the real thing. Like, they did a great parody of a Vietnamese baby book in the early 70s.
I remember hearing that on the
Michael
documentary.
O'Donoghue, and it's just brutal. It's like baby's first shattered limb, you know, baby, and just dark and horrible. But it looked like a baby book. It looked completely real. And so, you know, The Onion is a parody of a newspaper and a news website, and the whole point is you want it to look exactly and sound exactly like a real newspaper.
Yeah.
So definitely learned that from Lampoon and Mad.
And there's so many other things to go from that, but I have to remember to ask you about the Weird Al.
We can talk Weird Al. That's in the Mad Magazine arena.
And people are used to my ADD or whatever the heck you call it, but with that too, like everyone listening, 'cause there's so many people that are they've either started their own thing, or whether they're authors, business owners, entrepreneurs. There are a lot of people that are like getting into doing their own thing. And what I always explain to people from my experience and everyone I've ever talked to is like your influence, like you have your mentors and stuff, and then you have somewhat of a vision, but you're figuring out like the how along the way.
Absolutely.
And a lot of people I've seen get stuck and they're like, well, I don't, you know, you already knew your whole demographic, and now like with your company, and then now you have your podcasting. I'm like, I did my first episode in my freaking car, like with the sound was terrible. I didn't know what I was gonna, and I just kept figuring it out, but I didn't. But then I've seen some people with social media and stuff that will completely like copy, like literally someone's process, that they'll make a profit in the short term, but they're exposed, you know, like how to master success and 5 easy steps, buy my course and they're literally like saying word for word. But then when it gets in depth of really asking them how, like I've known someone that like recorded his thing in a fake mansion, saying like, you can be successful like me, look, that's my, and I was just like, and I met the person at one of my speaking events, and I just remember I was like, what are you doing? And I was just like, what? I understand like you got to market stuff, but when you're teaching people to build a company when you've never had one, and you're just flat out lying, isn't the same thing as learning from your mentors.
It's not the same thing as faking it till you make it. Like that's a legitimate strategy.
Yes.
But lying till you make it is not.
What's the help explain the difference to the list, like the fake it till you make it thing?
So I'm going to use a rock climbing analogy.
Okay.
Because I'm a rock climber and I love it, and I'm insufferable with the rock climbing analogies.
Yeah.
Because it's such a great metaphor for life. Because you're climbing.
I had the only blind human to summit Mount Everest on my show, by the way.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
that's
fantastic.
fantastic. That's not mountain climbing though. That's a suicide mission. And that's not rock climbing. It's mountain climbing, and it's different.
Yeah.
And I would never do that.
Yeah, and he's
rock
blind.
climbing is like
crazy.
You know, a cliff, 100-foot cliff or more. But
yeah.
You know, minimum 100. You can use a top rope. You can lead climb. But anyway, when you're rock climbing, sometimes you don't see a handhold.
Yeah.
Above you. And so oftentimes on a good cliff, on a good climb, you know there's one just above your reach. So you grab what you can like down here, and then you smear your feet like on just a flat surface of the cliff where there's really no foothold. You just sort of hop on there and smear, and it's like going like this.
Yeah.
Just enough to push you up a couple of inches, and you reach, and there's a little bomber handhold right there.
Okay.
So you can go a little bit more. That's faking it till you make it.
Okay.
Like you literally didn't have anything to stand on. But you got there. So something like finessing your resume to sound really good, you know, to get in the door.
Yeah.
That's faking it till you make it.
But then you're going to deliver once you get...
Exactly. You're going to deliver the best you can. Doing it in your car, starting good, not perfect, you know.
Yeah.
I did the same thing. Like that's how I do everything. It's like I start because I'm passionate about it and I want to start, and I know once I start, I'm going to learn.
Yes.
And then I'm going to look back later and I'm going to see those first efforts. I mean, I'm going to be like, oh, that was so pathetic.
Yes.
I didn't know what I was doing, but I couldn't have got where I am now if I hadn't done that.
You have to go through terrible.
Everybody wants to start perfect, you know, and it's just, it holds up a lot of people. I see that happen a lot where they're like working on something for 2 years before they unleash it. And I always tell those people, look, there are competitors who opted for the start good, not perfect strategy, who already started their thing, and they've learned so much in that 2 years that you've spent trying to perfect your thing. They're already better than you, and they're already more successful than you, and you haven't even started.
Yes, it's a key.
Yeah,
it's
and
a key.
You see that a lot. It's a compulsion that most people have. It's probably an instinctual thing. They're just scared of the exposure, putting something out there that's kind of crappy and dealing with the haters. You know,
yes.
Saying you suck. What are you doing out there? Hey, I don't care.
You
I'm
suck
starting
that
this
you
thing.
have the time.
You suck that you have time to say that. Exactly. So yeah, just it's the way I always do it.
Me too.
And it works.
And I think everyone listening to understand, like, the Onion is like this major worldwide phenomenon, but
Yeah, but go look at issue 1.
exactly.
Black and white, not very funny, newsprint, 8 pages, maybe 12 pages, a joke on the front page about Mendota Monster Mauls Madison was the headline. So it's like a local joke. Nobody outside of Madison's going to get it. We couldn't have gotten
But you
where we got
started.
now if we hadn't done that.
Yeah.
Because you learn over time, oh, local jokes aren't that accessible outside. So let's do universally accessible jokes so that people in LA and New York will get them.
Yes.
And then people in the comedy industry will discover it. And most college humor publications that I encounter do the same thing. They're doing local humor.
Yeah.
And I always tell them, all right, you can do that, but you're just limiting yourself.
Yeah.
Like, how does that help you? Especially in this day and age when you're online.
That's
They're
very
all
true
online.
with online.
Why are you doing that?
Yeah.
A little local humor is fine, but in humor, the audience is so small, like you have to be as accessible as possible. So you can do a local joke, but give it some accessibility so that maybe you use an analogy or something so people in your local area will get what you're talking about.
Yeah,
But somebody
yeah.
outside that area will also get it. Like Monty Python did that beautifully on their show,
Yeah.
Monty Python's Flying Circus, where they would do local jokes about British politics in the late 60s that as a teenager when I was watching their show on PBS, I didn't get them at all, but they were hilarious.
Yeah.
I totally got the humor.
Yeah, yeah.
Like the whole election night coverage of the silly party and the sensible party.
Yeah.
Fantastically hilarious.
I always remember, when I think of Monty Python, I always just remember the always look on the bright side, and they're on the cross.
Right,
and
that's from The Life of Brian.
Yeah, and they start doing the little dance.
Right.
Before that was after the show, obviously.
Right. But
makes
they
me
knew how
laugh.
to make humor accessible,
Yeah,
even though they were doing some local stuff.
yeah.
Yeah.
And if they were sitting here right now, like sharing their thing, they'd be saying, "We started with not knowing what the hell we were doing."
They all did TV shows before that show.
Yes.
Like more rinky-dink shows. And you look at
Yeah.
that show now, it looks pretty rinky-dink, but they all had shows. Before they had shows, they had college reviews that they were doing.
Yes.
People are always...
There's no overnight success.
There's no overnight success. People who are successful, especially in comedy and entertainment,
Yeah.
do it from the day they discover it.
Yes.
Andy
yes.
Kaufman is performing in front of his mirror as a kid.
Yeah.
You know, Steve Martin is performing for people at the magic shop where he works,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And they work their way up. And so
people don't see that side of
they
it.
never see that. And so it's critical. And I was doing that. I sold band candy in high school and I performed for people. I'd go door to door and just tell jokes and like try to be funny.
Yeah.
They would buy my band candy, and that was a really valuable experience for me. And I drew comics for my high school newspaper.
Yeah.
But then, so I run into people all the time who say, oh, I'd love to work for the Onion, or I'd love to write for a TV show. I want to be a cast member on SNL. And I'll say, well, what kind of comedy have you done? None. All right, well, good luck. You're never, ever, ever going to get those jobs. Period.
Well, I can't just immediately start.
That's what they think.
People will ask too. I want to be a guest on. I heard Conan O'Brien say recently when people he'll run into him and say, they'll be like, I want to be on your show, and he'll be like, what have you done?
Right.
Like, you don't get it. I don't. They're like, well, no, me getting on your show is going to build my. Then I'll take off.
I'll be so great.
No, I have people on my
will
show
like
like Steve Martin that have worked 30 plus years to get to where they got, to have something to share.
Exactly.
To be able to have the honor of being on the show.
Absolutely. People don't want to go through that dues paying period.
Yeah.
Nobody likes that.
Yeah, and there's no other way to do it.
They want the instant gratification, which we were just talking about.
Yeah, they like when I was younger, I falsely assumed that you're just born with a talent. Successful
That's a myth
people.
that persists.
And it made me like
comedy
go down. That's when I got in trouble in my earlier years. I thought I was stupid. I went a whole other, ended up almost dying in jail. Yeah, it's a whole other. Everyone listening knows that thing, but yeah, and it was like I would think. Well, they were just born with it. And then I've had NFL players and stuff on the show that just like you said, it's not. I found out since like 6th grade they were getting up at 4:30 a.m. and then in college, they would be doing double, people would be doing this, and then they're staying 8 hours after. The ones that make it to that next level were always, they had the talent, like in the passion, like you said, to kind of know their lane, but then they had to put in 1,000 times more work than anyone else.
Michael Jordan's my favorite sports example.
Yes.
Because here's a guy who got cut from his high school team.
Yes.
Got put on junior varsity.
Yeah.
And he always comes back to the fundamentals, like shooting free throws. And like he is, I mean, I guess everybody thinks a couple of players are better than him now, but like at the time in the 90s, he was a player unlike anything anyone had ever seen.
I grew up watching.
He could fly.
He could.
And it was just amazing.
It was crazy.
And it looked like the most beautiful natural talent you've ever seen. Total myth. It's all hard work.
Phil Jackson said Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant are the two hardest working people that he's ever had on his team, that he's ever worked with. Behind the scenes, they would put in more hours.
Absolutely.
And that's why, like, obviously he had talent, but
talent
so
comes
much
from
more
hard
work
work.
in.
I believe you can develop talent
100%
by working hard, because I didn't start out funny.
No.
Nobody starts out funny. Like when I was a kid, I was shy and I was awkward and I was terminally unfunny.
Yeah.
But I studied Mad Magazine. I was really in love with it. I practiced it. I wrote a lot. I drew a lot. I performed door to door selling candy.
Yeah. It's like you're
you
putting the
build
reps
a skill.
in.
When you put in the reps, you not only get this sort of like automatic, like you're building muscle where you're like learning stuff. You're building skills, you're building confidence, and you're getting good. And then when you get to a certain level of good, people start saying, "Oh, you're so talented." They do. They start saying that.
I'm so happy you said that.
Yeah.
It's so true. And I'm just thinking, like, yesterday when you were speaking, there was like 1,000 people there, and you were young, you were more to yourself, you were introverted. I dropped speech class 3 times. I always share that when I speak. And people, because say in my younger years, I was there and I saw you come and speak, and I'd be like, that Scott guy must never have had fear of public, must be nice and everything. But that's what, like, when I do the whole, like, this show and these conversations, I'm almost like speaking to the younger me, almost like the stuff that I wish I would have known, the real truth.
I do the same thing with my whole How to Write Funny business is marketed to Scott Dikkers at age 13.
Yes.
Because I was searching for a book on how to do humor, how to get into the humor business.
Yeah.
So I write this book, How to Write Funny. There was no book.
Yeah.
Steve Allen wrote a book called How to Be Funny, I think. I'm spacing on the name of the book. Famous book. And I got it from the library and I read it, and it wasn't a book on how to do comedy. It was like his secretary wrote down some random things he had said.
Yeah.
It was like anecdotes and stuff. It was a total worthless book. There was no how-to book. And so I wanted to write one after doing The Onion for so many years and figuring out, okay, I know this craft. I know how to write humor. I'm going to put it in a book.
You've built people, and you've taught, like you said,
not only have I done it myself, but I've hired and taught and trained people who've gone on to great success. The Onion is a great success. So I feel like I have the credibility, I have the knowledge, totally doing this book. And so, I market it to myself, and then I'm doing courses. I just launched this course called Comedy Business School, where it trains people how to get into the business of comedy.
That's cool.
Which also mystifies people. Like I said, they come to me and they say, I want to be on SNL. Or can you look at my script? Can you read my story? Read my book and tell me what you think. And I have to tell them that's not how it works.
Yeah.
That's not how it works. Publish your book. There's no excuse. Get it on Amazon.
These days,
Yeah, get it out there. Publish a blog. Go on open mics, start doing your stuff. When I hear about you organically, then we'll have a conversation.
Yes.
And so nobody tells people that.
That's how we come from 2 totally different life backgrounds, but we wouldn't have heard. It was like we both were doing our thing and got to a point that we had the same. I wouldn't have even known why I needed a speaking coach, a charisma coach,
Right.
till I got to a certain point. But that's how people it's like you keep doing stuff, and then because then I had the false mindset, well, successful people just have it easy because they all know each other.
They're in the
then
club.
I've learned it's as you're doing stuff, you meet other people that are doing stuff.
That's a whole other level of what you get by doing. Besides building the skill and creating talent, is you make connections, and you meet. Even when you're an introvert like me, you're going to meet people and make connections.
Yes.
No one's an island. No one succeeds alone. You need other people to support you and help you, and who you help.
Yes.
And so I meet somebody like Mary when I'm trying to elevate my speaking career.
Yeah.
And that's somebody you meet too. And so, these other people are hugely helpful. And as you know, like, you become like the people you are around.
Yes.
So when you surround yourself by other people who are striving, who are successful, who are driven, especially in your field, it just elevates you. And it does. Those are your peers now. And your peers are no longer the sacks that you hung out with when you were 13 who were like, you can't ever do anything. Work in the factory like me, you know. You're just not in that group anymore.
That's going to fail.
And I'm still friends with those people on Facebook, like in my high school class. You know, I'm still like in this Facebook group with all of them, but they're not my peers anymore. You know?
I can't, and you know, it's funny, like I'm introverted a lot when it comes to normal people, but when it's like people like but like small talk and stuff like that, I'm just not. But when it's people that aren't normal, like I can sit here and talk with you for like very easily and have a conversation than like when normal people have small, like my wife's great, she's more outgoing and that stuff too. Is like I'll be nice, but like I could be more awkward in those, and then people that are just different doing other stuff,
I relate to that so much. Like talking to Weird Al for an hour was great. Because we're both in the comedy business. We have 1,000 things to talk about. There was never a lack of topic for the conversation. But just now on my way here, like I'm in rural Ohio, and I'm stopping at this gas station, and there's all these guys in pickups and tow trucks with Confederate flags hanging off the back of them. If I was in line with one of those guys and they were like, heck of a day, isn't it? I would be mortified. Like, what do I say to this person? I have nothing in common with this person.
It's like,
God love
don't
him.
make it more than
I
it
just can't get into it. That takes so much energy for me. And it's so stressful to say, yeah, it's a hot one today, isn't it?
Yes.
Like, I don't care about that. I'm not talking about that. I'd rather talk about parody songs.
I know. I can't relate to, and it's the same, like you were saying with and it's like the old people that you're with, it's not like, oh, I'm successful, I'm better. It's like, I can't, some of the stuff they're like gossiping about on the news and stuff, I'm like, I don't even, I already have enough crap I'm worrying about for what I'm doing in my life. Like, I don't even need that to think about.
Yeah, no, you found your tribe and you found your peers, and that's natural. Like, you want to be around people who support you and who are like you. And not people who are just doing something totally unrelated to what you're interested in.
But people, like when you're saying, they ask you just, how can I get right on Saturday Night Live, or how can I just have Weird Al as a mentor, is what we're kind of explaining now is you keep doing, and start doing something, be crappy at it, continue to get better at it, learn along the way, and then you'll get to where you're earning respect to connect with people like that. How did you meet Weird Al?
So, we're speaking of my podcast, the How to Write Funny podcast, where I interview comedians, comedy writers, stuff like that. And I think he was the first person I interviewed for my show, and it was super simple.
Yeah.
And it was because of all the dues that I had paid. So,
gotcha.
Started The Onion in '88. Weird Al was one of the first people in Hollywood to discover The Onion.
Really?
He's a real connector. He's a real maven.
Really?
If you know that term from Malcolm Gladwell, who just knows everybody.
Yeah.
So he has millions of Twitter followers now, but even before the internet, he knew everybody. And he discovered The Onion, he was passing it around.
Really?
So other people in entertainment discovered it, and agents discovered it, and it became a thing where now The Onion's getting phone calls from agents saying, hey, we want to represent you. do you want a job on a TV show? Do you want your own TV show?
They were asking you that?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome.
So, The Onion was friends with Weird Al, and he'd done a couple of interviews with the AV Club, which is our entertainment review brand that used to be the back half of the newspaper. Now it's a separate website.
Okay.
And The Onion started doing this comedy festival in Chicago.
Yeah.
Where we bring in, big comedians, big names, and kind of a big event or whatever. And so Weird Al was at it one year, and it was like, I reached out to his people and said, hey, can he be on my podcast? Absolutely.
Really? That's great.
Like, it was a no-brainer.
Yeah.
So, never would have gotten there if I hadn't done all that work.
Yes.
I mean, maybe, he's a nice guy, maybe he would have been on my podcast if I were just some guy who decided to start a podcast, but he knew he was going to be talking to another comedy expert about comedy.
Yeah. Yeah. So the event, did he perform a song, or he just talk?
Yeah, he does his act. I think he showed his movie UHF and talked about it.
Kramer was in that. Huh?
He sure was.
Yeah.
Michael Richards. Yeah.
Michael Richards.
That's a really cool
classic
movie, unique movie.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember. I grew up watching that.
Yeah, formative years.
Yeah.
That movie came out. It's true.
Rambo.
Right, that Rambo parody, super funny. Yeah.
That's awesome. So, and we'll put it all in the show notes, but
awesome.
your podcasts and everything too can have a link to the episode with Weird Al, and also everything else, of course, that's going on with it.
Yeah, and I started a new podcast kind of based on this book, because after I left The Onion and started this other business, How to Write Funny business, I started getting asked to be on entrepreneurial podcasts.
Got it.
And speaking at conferences with entrepreneurs and stuff like that, and it was kind of like, that happened almost by mistake. Like, I thought I was in the comedy business, but it turned out I was in the business of starting businesses. And so people want to know about that.
You're an entrepreneur. People forget that you're an entrepreneur when you're doing your own
totally
thing.
And so
you're your own business.
Starting companies like The Onion and like the AV Club and like my comic strip even before was a startup that was really successful.
Yeah.
And then How to Write Funny is doing really well. So I started doing a podcast called Outrageous Entrepreneurship, which I do with a co-host, Victoria Elena Nunez, who's a Chicago entrepreneur.
Okay.
And we just talk about like the basics of starting a business. So, because I feel like when people are starting businesses, there's plenty of books you can buy and there's plenty of podcasts to listen to, but I feel like a lot of those podcasts have like Fortune 500 entrepreneurs and like billionaire entrepreneurs as guests, and that's fascinating. But we're just two like down-to-earth people talking about the real world of like, how you get started, how you should bootstrap it, how you have to, balance your personal life and your work life with an entrepreneur, and work on your business, not in your business, and all this kind of basic stuff.
Yes.
And it's really been rewarding, and
stuff you wish you would have known, and
stuff earlier. I wish. And so it's like an opportunity to be a peer of someone listening.
Yeah.
So they listen to you every week, and they just, these are my friends who talk about this thing I'm interested in.
That's great.
Which is great. And whenever this airs, that podcast will probably be up and running, but as of now, it's not, because we're just putting together our backlog, and it'll probably launch in a couple of weeks.
Okay. If you have the info, we'll put it on.
Yeah, I'll give you the info.
This will probably air about the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
So
could well be up.
And the listeners will love that.
I hope so. Yeah, I think it's really good. We have really good chemistry, me and her.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's fun. No guests, just us talking for half an hour once a week.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. I'll do that sometimes. Actually, some shows I'll have a guest. Sometimes I'll just sit down and start talking about crap.
I started doing that on my podcast. I always had guests who were in comedy, but then I started doing these solo episodes where I would just talk about, here's how you write a joke.
Yeah.
Or here's how you write a comedy story.
Yeah.
Those have been good. It's been fun.
It's interesting how and I was just like, we'll see what happens. People were like,
exactly,
hey, that was good. I was like, oh, cool.
That's what I do, yeah.
But, it's so true though. Like you, probably without even knowing it, are such an entrepreneur, and you've learned, and like you were mentioning, and I've had Fortune 500 owners on the show, but what I'm pre-show, I talk to them about stuff that has totally become common sense and try to help, because you can get to a 10 and completely, and I have too, like that's why I like speaking and also having a Q&A, because people will ask me stuff that I can glaze over and it's just become comments. I'm like, oh, I'm so glad you asked that. And it's helping them because they're thinking someone can be teaching from a level 10 and acting like you have to have all this to be successful, and they're forgetting, wait, when I started,
Right.
like me, like my office was in a freaking barn. It was the recession. I couldn't get a loan anywhere. There wasn't crowdfunding. It was like...
And people at 1 can scarcely relate to somebody at 10.
Yeah.
You just need to start from a different level.
Yeah. And that's... half of it is just hearing the mindset behind it. Honestly, like, it just gives you hope when you want to give up, to know, like, okay, everyone goes through this.
Absolutely.
And if they do, like, I can keep going.
Yeah.
Because I would think you know what, I wouldn't hear those stories enough when I was younger, and I would just think, I can't do this, because those are the people that just were born straight A students and successful, and
success handed to them on a silver platter.
MBA,
And there are those people, but there's a lot of people who don't have that.
Oh yeah.
Who work for it.
The majority of the ones that I have met are, and even some I think that do have stuff handed to them, are, to take anything to another level, still have to put incredible amounts of work in, because there's a place by here, it used to be a giant basket. I forget it's $1 billion basket company that sold like baskets, and they made a building that was a huge, shaped like a basket. The second or third generation son, the company went bankrupt just because, and I have a friend who's a consultant to billionaires, that's what his job is. He tried it, and the son kind of like is one of those other examples that had it all given to him, and unfortunately was taught everything except like the struggle, and so he just like crumbled that company within almost like 5 years of what was like a 50-year thing that was built, you know? And so there's those situations, and it's trying to balance that out. That's where I've heard some parents talking about, like, I don't remember if it was Bill Gates or...
I know Warren Buffett. One of those people who won't give his kids any money.
Yeah.
They'll send them to school, pay for their schooling, best schooling, but after that they're on their own.
Yes.
I love that.
Like when I see that other analogy, I totally get it. He's like, because I'm giving them more than money, I'm teaching them my mindset and how to be able to make it on their own.
Right.
Which is like the opposite of what happened with that. And I'm not, I mean, you know, as a parent, maybe that guy had nothing and was thinking, by doing this, I'm giving him everything. But if you're not teaching them, it's like killing the lion and constantly bringing it back to the tribe and not teaching them ever how to hunt on their own.
Spoiling is awful.
Yeah, it's like you want to give more. I feel like you always want to try to be a better version, and I hope my kids are better versions. The parents, you want to do your best, but then you have to weigh out the natural consequences.
Yeah, it's tough because the impulse is to spoil and rotten, obviously.
Yeah.
It's not helpful.
And you have kids?
I have one.
You have one? How old?
10.
10?
I'm sorry, 11.
11?
Yeah.
How's that going?
It's great. It's the best ride in the park.
Yeah?
That's what I always tell people.
Yeah.
And he's an only child, and so I'm very conscious of only child syndrome, where you see only child's, it's not a word, only children grow up and feel like they're entitled and like they should get everything they want. And so I do this thing with him, and his mother and I are separated. But we talked about this, and we co-parent really well.
That's cool.
But this whole idea of engineered neglect.
Yeah.
So like purposefully not be available for him once in a while. Give him the experience of having 4 other siblings, and like, oh, you wait here because we have to deal with this other sibling now. That's healthy, and that helps people know, oh, I'm not the center of attention. I have to figure out how to self-soothe. I have to figure out how to do my own thing.
Yeah.
I have to have executive function, et cetera, et cetera. So I do that.
Yeah.
It's like if he wants to do something, sometimes I go, no, sorry, I'm not available. You know, it's tough. I hate it.
No,
and it used to be harder.
Yeah.
But it's working because he's turning into an amazing kid who has great executive function. He knows he's loved.
Yeah.
He also doesn't believe he can expect that the world is going to be presented to him on a silver platter.
Yeah.
He knows he has to work for things, and he knows he has to be self-sufficient, self-reliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun. It's great.
That's something with my kids, I'm always teaching them if they're needing money for something, even if instead of just saying, Dad, can I have $5? Just, what can I do to earn $5? I'm like, just rephrase that.
Right.
And sometimes just them asking, I might just be like, hey, can you just help do the dish in 5 minutes? But at least it's changing give me $5 to, and they'll start to redirect themselves. Hey, Dad, what can I do to earn $5?
Right.
And at least just like that little flip right there is.
It sounds like maybe your kids are older.
Well, we took in our nephew, who we've raised since age 9. He's 20 now.
Oh, okay.
And then my stepson is 18, but I've been married to his mom since he was 3. So I call him my son. He calls me. I raised him his whole life.
Right.
But no, then we have 3 other kids. It's craziness, and we're done. But our youngest is 4.5.
Okay.
And then my girls are. It's hard to keep up. 11 and 12, 6th and 7th grade.
Right in the neighborhood of mine. That's great.
We have enough to have a basketball team, actually.
That's so great. So yeah, different challenges at all levels.
Yeah.
Like with the 4-year-old, I remember those days it being about teaching him to say it's no big deal. That was the biggest thing, because everything was the end of the world. Everything was like bawling and like, wah, whatever. And just teaching him to say the words, it's no big deal. And then no matter what would happen, like, you can't have this candy now, maybe you can have some later. No big deal. Because otherwise that would be like a tantrum.
Yeah.
And that was fun.
I like that, actually.
That was really fun.
To use that.
Yeah. It's no big deal. And make it a thing, make it a point of pride.
Yeah.
Can you say that? Like, it would be really impressive if you could say that. And obviously every kid is different.
Sure.
So you're going to have to go with whatever motivates that particular kid.
Yeah.
But for mine, it was like he wanted to impress us.
Yeah.
And he I don't know if he was like a little show off, but he was kind of like artistic and loved being seen.
Yeah.
And so the way to give him the carrot and the stick was ignore versus pay attention to. And so if you could give him high praise and always praising effort, not ability, that's a big one for me.
Yes.
Such a big one.
I was
maniacal about that. His grandmother, the most beautiful, wonderful woman in the world, my wife's mother, best grandma ever, would come over and he would do something or say something and she would say, oh, you have such a good memory. And I would always step in, I would literally correct her. And I would say, oh, no, good remembering on that one, Charlie. I'd always have to make sure it was praising the effort.
Yeah.
Never, ever the ability.
That's a great point.
And making sure he learned that to get good at something you had to work at. That was also tough because he would try something and not be good at it and get really frustrated.
Yes.
And so I don't want to do that. I'm terrible at that. I'm like, well, how can you get good at that? And then over the years, like it happened with a few different things.
Yes.
It was one project, then it was another project. Lately, it's been soccer.
Yeah.
He's dedicated himself and he's practiced for 2 or 3 years now, like solidly, and he's risen up to where he's on like this really like high-level team for his age.
Yeah.
And he's one of the best players on the team. And he knows the reason he got there was from the work. And also when he and I would practice together, when he was younger, he was like 8 or 9.
Yeah.
I would play the hardest I could.
Yeah.
I'd kick as hard as I could when he was at goalie.
Yeah.
And he would get hurt and he would cry.
I heard
and he would
Gary,
say,
I just
can't,
heard
can't
Gary
you make
Vee
it
saying
easy
this exact same thing.
Can't you go easy on me? And
now he's thanking you.
I would set him down and I would say, no, Charlie. And I would remind him when my father played chess with me,
yeah,
he beat me every single time.
Yeah.
Just wiped the floor with me. And I always showed up and I always kept playing, and it was one of the proudest achievements of my life when I finally beat him.
Now that's the key there, is like it's a totally different level of proud, because you know I really earned
You really earned it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he does thank me now. He thanks me for making him cry by hurting him playing
Yes.
soccer. And that's a thing, I don't want to get too like gender biased about it, but that's a thing fathers do.
Yeah.
Mothers are often not hard on their kids. They mother them.
Yes.
You know, they're soft on them, and there's a place for that. It's wonderful.
But they need both.
A father needs to be like more of the tough love, like, you know, here's how you toughen up, kiddo.
No, I agree.
For boys and girls.
It's important. You need both. There's times where I knew what I needed to go to my mom to, and then there's times. Look, my dad would. If I'm doing something, Dad's come, and I needed that.
Yeah.
I needed that, and my mom like couldn't. You know, I could get away with more, but then also there's times I could go to her with stuff that I needed to, and it's like both in a healthy way, balance things
Right.
out.
And if it's a same-sex couple, like there can be like a parent who's more the good cop and the bad cop.
Absolutely.
Like I think it can totally work.
Because they kind of usually, it's more of almost like a personality thing.
Yeah.
Like I know one guy who, they're not a same sex, he's married to his wife, but he's a stay-at-home dad, and he
So
has...
traditional roles are kind of reversed.
And that's more naturally his, and his wife's super driven, so she takes it, but they both know that like the key is just know who you are and what your strength is, and then put that into
Totally,
it.
yeah.
And like they make it, someone could be like, oh, you're a stay-at-home, but he's like, I don't care. Like, look, I know who I am. I'm happy, and
that's
and
silly.
she does, and it's benefits.
And it takes
the
a
kids.
village too, like having friends and other adults who
Yes.
bring in different sorts of like mentoring and parenting and guidance. Like that's all great.
Yeah.
That's super important.
Yes, and it's a lifelong learning, and you know, you were talking about leadership and stuff yesterday too, and a lot of that, there's different things that goes in there. It's like what you were saying with praising the effort.
Yeah.
It sounds like the way you would hire people, because that's like with my company Dreamshine with special needs, it's the exact same way. We don't just hire people. Okay, in the old days I would. I'd be like, we need someone so bad. You got experience, you can, because it was a little different. Like we have to have a certain amount of staff per like individuals that we have
Sure.
to be in the ratios and stuff. So I'd be like, you got experience, you've been in the field, we need you. It's great, let's start. But then I started learning more and more that there was a whole other level of we've some of the greatest people that have that willingness to want to learn, and like you said, that effort that has built, like we had the lowest turnover in the entire state. It was 11%, and the average in my field is like 78%.
Wow.
Which is crazy high. Like I'm speaking on it next month, but it's been 13 years of learning so much about like beyond that, and the different, like you were saying with even like delegating and different levels of leadership, and learning how to get out of my own way too. And you mentioned it too, like people on my team are smarter than me in some areas, and sweet, that's okay. Do it, make it better. Like I don't have to have an ego and be like, because I'm the CEO and owner, no one. You can do that better. Like, but I also say too, like don't just have an idea, like actually, because anyone can have these great ideas, like make it happen.
Yeah. So I always see the best in people, and so if I see somebody with a little bit of a spark of like writing ability, or like a compulsion to write or be funny or whatever, I would bring them on. I'd give them a chance at the Onion, no experience necessary, and they might flail a little bit.
Yeah.
For a while. And there was one writer I talked about yesterday who was kind of almost tone deaf comedy-wise, and the other writers didn't like him and wanted him fired and stuff. But I knew he was a hard worker, and I knew that talent is something that you build. It's not something you're born with.
Yes.
And gave him a chance, he kept working. He's been probably the most successful alumni,
Yeah.
or alumnus, is that the word? From The Onion. He was the co-executive producer of The Daily Show with Jon Stewart.
That's great.
And he co-created The Colbert Show with Stephen Colbert.
Really?
He works in Hollywood now on sitcoms. He produced a movie.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so it's like you have to give people the chance to fail and learn and grow. And so I'll hire somebody with passion. I'll hire a Rudy
Yes.
before I'll hire someone with an impressive resume who doesn't seem to have a lot of passion for that field.
I
I
always
feel like they're a dead end.
I
But the other
agree.
person, the sky's the limit.
Yes, I always say like I will hire character over education any day of the week.
Totally.
And I'm not against education.
No,
but
it's fine.
I've had someone that had more like degrees than a thermometer apply for a position that I have for my highest executive, like the admin that runs my whole program, and the person that does it has her high school degree, and
That's great.
and started doing and was the heart willing to learn, always wanting to learn, meeting weekly, the best that I've ever had. I had people that had so many different things applying, and they were like too much of drawing like all these graphs and sit like, here's how I can like, okay, cool. Are you willing to? None of that really applies to how are you willing to learn? You're gonna have to be willing to learn to do it the way we do it. But I have 3 MBA. I know that's great, but I started with a barn. Like I have to be. It doesn't.
Yeah.
And they weren't. Some of them weren't, and it was just like, okay, like you said, that whole talent. It's there's
critical.
another side to it too, and I love that story you just shared. Though I never knew this part of like being a business owner, entrepreneur, of like raising people up almost like your children in a way. And you think of that like you helped, and I'm not saying it like an ego way, it's like a gratitude thing. Like you are able to help teach people, and they grow within your company.
Yeah, the company gives them an opportunity to ply their trade.
Yeah.
And because they didn't start a company, you did.
Yeah.
So they come to work for you, and you're paying them, and they're doing work for you. That's an even trade. They're also getting, you're both getting something even deeper than that. You're getting an asset that they're helping you build.
Yes.
And they're getting lifetime skills.
Yes.
Lifetime experience and knowledge. They can go off. That's their asset. Like,
Yeah.
now they have greater earning potential, they have greater experience, etc. And one of my big things with people is free them and just let them go. So The Onion was a very unusual company in that way, where there were literally no job requirements. Like, it was just come to the weekly writers meeting, pitch ideas, and write 1 story a week for writers. That was it. And that freedom allowed people to be weird and be misfits and not show up for days on end. They would never get fired. There was never any question. Like, they knew they had a home there.
Yeah.
And that built so much, not only loyalty, they loved The Onion. And they would have never left it, never defied the culture. Like, they was a family. Like, they felt so integrated. But beyond that, it allowed them to build this ability and become so hardworking and just so slavishly loyal to the vision that they were just unstoppable. And you just step back and you realize you've created this, like you said, it's almost like this, a child goes off to college, runs for president, gets to be the president, and you're just stepping back in awe watching this beautiful flower bloom. It's one of the principles. In my book, I talk about the 13 principles of what I call outrageous marketing, which is the way I built The Onion, the way I build my other companies. And I analyzed other companies that are in totally different arenas, like health, food service, etc. And I've seen that the most outrageously successful companies do these things.
Yes.
And one of them
100%.
is to free your people.
Yeah.
And find people who are passionate and just let them go.
Yeah.
Because it feels counterintuitive. It's like, oh, if you let them go, they're going to go work for somebody else. No, they're not. They're gonna love you so much because of that freedom, because every other place is gonna browbeat them and micromanage them.
Yeah.
So it's like another example I didn't put in my book, but I think of a lot, is George Lucas.
Yeah.
Great entrepreneur, brilliant guy. When he starts his special effects company, Industrial Light and Magic, he hires people who are tinkerers and who are just smart special effects guys who are curious, like geeks who do electronics and computers and stuff. And they start breaking new ground, like in the 80s. They developed computer-generated imagery that ends up, Pixar becomes a spin-off of the company that they sell to Steve Jobs.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's just guys, geeks who he let go, and they all became better than him because he set them free.
Yeah.
And they could just come and tinker and play and come up with cool stuff. And now, because of that, which is another principle in my book, is when you do that, when you find your mission like that and you live it, you create a center of gravity that draws like-minded people to you.
That's so true.
Any special effects person in the world wanted to work at ILM.
Yes.
Because of what they were doing.
Yes.
Anybody who wants to tell stories in movies wants to work at Pixar because they tell the best stories. Anybody who wanted to write satire came to The Onion.
Yeah.
And so it was because these were people who were free to do their best.
Yeah.
And they weren't hampered, they weren't controlled, they weren't on a leash.
Yeah.
Those two things work in conjunction. Letting people be free, and also like finding people who are truly passionate about that craft or that work. And you know, those are all entertainment industry examples, but
well,
in the book I use Walgreens, I use KFC, because they do
Chick-fil-A.
the same thing. Yeah, you know, there's so many companies that do that. If you step back and look at them, and now a lot of companies are discovering what they call flex time, which is basically the same thing. It's just letting people free. I think it was 3M that did it every Friday.
Yeah.
And then they realized, they look back at their records and they're like, oh, all of our best new inventions were coming from Fridays. Like Post-it notes came out of a Friday.
Yeah.
So let's do 3 days a week.
Yeah.
And there's a company in Australia that was like 5 days a week.
Yeah.
And this is all pretty recent. You know, I was doing this 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Because it was just, it felt so natural to me. And I will give credit to W. Edwards Deming, the management guru, who went to Japan and taught the Japanese how to rebuild their economy after World War II. So he's largely credited with teaching them how to become, they were literally a ruined country after World War II.
Yeah.
And in the space of 20 or 30 years, they were one of the top economies in the world.
Wow.
Huge success story. Great joke in Back to the Future when Doc Brown looks at the part from the time machine in the 50s and he goes, no wonder it doesn't work, it says made in Japan. And Marty's like, what do you mean, Doc? All the best stuff is made in Japan, because Marty's from the 80s.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I had the great privilege of being a part of this conference, a management conference. Peter Drucker is like one of W. Edwards Deming's main disciples.
Okay.
And so he was like his number one. He was there, W. Edwards Deming was there. He was like an ancient man by the time he was speaking at this conference.
Yeah.
And they were talking about what they call total quality management, which is all about continual improvement.
Yes.
Treating everyone like your customer, treating your employees like your customer, your customer like your customer, your business partners like your customer. And always thinking of what can I do to be of service.
Yes.
And very Japanese. And so I worked at a radio station, a public radio station, where we aired the speeches from this conference, and my job was to edit them. And W. Edwards Demings was so old that his speech had like almost a 20-second gap between each word. It was just a horribly, agonizingly boring speech, but it was really smart.
Yeah.
So I went through, and this is back in the days of tape editing, like, you know, actual sticky tape and razor blades. I had to cut out those 20 seconds so it was usable on the radio.
Oh, wow.
And I kind of memorized everything he said. And this is right when The Onion was starting up, and I was implementing all these radical management strategies, like how to just like let people go and like think about the employees, like, well, what do they want?
Yes.
Think of it in terms of service.
Yes.
What can I do to be of service to them? Well, I can give them this opportunity to live their dream,
A serving leader, yeah.
Yeah, it's so valuable. Most people, like you said, are all about ego. They're all about what's in it for me.
Yeah.
How can I look good in this? Which is so short-sighted and so stupid. Because if they really wanted to look good, they'd think in terms of how can they be of service, and eventually they will look great.
They will, and they don't win in the long term.
It's a very short-term game.
Yeah, and the ones you really and you keep, because I know you've had so much experience with the entertainment industry, but I've been on like the other side of business, but then throughout the years, that's what changed my whole leadership. Is through the show and through years, I got to know people of all different, whether it would be actors, whether it would be publicists, whether it would be musicians. And then I would have like Fortune 500 owners that I'd connect with, like Dave Ramsey.
Yeah.
And I would start to, the ones that were doing it the right way, I would start to see these same, everyone had their own culture, because you want your culture to be unique to you, but like these same kind of foundational principles that I would see for places like that you were saying that were outrageously
That's what I got. I counted
successful.
13 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like you had 16. I'm eager to see what your other 3 are.
Yeah. And some of that's like what I've personally inputted like into my company too. Yeah. And I want to check this out after this also. But at the end of the day, like, it's really cool to see there's a lot of people doing awesome things, and then also the fact that you can look at people that work for the Onion and see. Some people will be like, well, how could you be happy for them if they left and went and did that? And it's like, that is so awesome that I was able to be a part of like that growth, and they were able to, I look at that as like, if that was part of their journey and that was the next step of it, and someone's like, well, isn't that betraying you? I'm like, no. Like, if that, why should I hold them back from,
absolutely, if
that's what their dream is? It'd be different if they came in and like stole all of our stuff and then went. I've had, that could be a whole other episode, and that's part of what we all go through too.
That's the flip side benefit of giving people freedom, is when someone's not a good fit, you find out immediately.
True.
So I'll just tell you this brief story of this roofer who I hired, and I treated him the same way. He came to fix my roof, and I just let him go. I said, okay, it's your responsibility, you do the roof. And first day, he didn't show up, so I didn't even show up for work.
Yeah.
He called me, and he's from Mississippi, and he goes, yeah, Scott, sorry I couldn't make it. I'm gonna be there tomorrow morning, first thing 7:30. You'll see me 7:30 a.m. And I said, all right, great. We'll see you at 7:30. The next day he doesn't show up. And then the third day he doesn't show up. So now I could have micromanaged him. Mm-hmm. And after the first day I'm like, you get your ass here. 7:30, you better get to work. Make him come.
Yeah.
And that would have been a whole nother trajectory. The trajectory that I was on, where I was like, hey, okay, you're not here. I immediately discovered what a loser he was.
Yeah.
After 3 days, he doesn't show up, and then his wife shows up.
Wow.
And she's like, has he been here working? Because he told me he's been here working. And I'm like, no, he hasn't been here. And they got into a fight. They got divorced. He'd been on a drinking bender. It was like,
oh wow.
I am so glad I discovered that quickly.
Yeah.
What a nightmare that would have been.
Oh my gosh. But that's a good perspective.
You pass the ball to somebody.
To have. It's
they
like,
have a
I
seat,
learned this quicker. It didn't work.
They fumble. It's like, okay, you're off the field.
Yes.
You know immediately.
Yes.
But if you pass the ball to somebody and they run for a touchdown, they're like, okay, I got the right person.
Yeah.
But if you micromanage them and like hold their hand all the way to the end zone, you're never going to know what they're capable of.
No, and in my earlier years, I would do that the wrong, and I throw myself, and that's why, like, I love what you keep saying, talent, leadership. It's not something. It's a skill you continue to grow and work on.
Totally.
And I would micromanage in areas because I would be so overprotective of our clients and this and that. And with some people, I would overdo it, and then I counterintuitively had some good people leave because, and then I had to take
they
off.
felt too constrained.
Yeah, and then sometimes I'd be keeping some of the wrong people on the team, that were really good at the job. They had the skill, but they didn't share the cult. Like they were like would be negative and like lash out to the other, and it was up to me. They weren't going to change, and I'd meet with them, and I'd be like this, and that's not micromanaging when you're like, this is not okay to be doing this, like the way you're acting, and they're like, oh yeah, and it went on and I was being too much. Honestly, it was a point I had to fire them. And I didn't, and I let it go on for like 18, almost 2 years.
Wow.
And I lost some good people. They're like, good people aren't gonna stay around that crap, no matter how good. And then I finally, like one day he totally flipped out. I had no choice but to get rid of him. And no one enjoys firing anyone, but I learned the next day when I came in, it was like the whole atmosphere changed in a positive way. And it was like, there was like this thick cloud of negativity that almost was becoming the new normal that I was allowing us to get used to. And then I realized from there, like, whoa, never again. So now, like,
good realization.
Yeah. I mean, and it took learning it the hard way. And then I realized, whoa. And that's when I was like, man, I've got to this is on me as a leader. And I remember I apologized to the whole team. And people weren't used to seeing that, like, oh, I'm like, yeah, I'm so sorry I was letting that happen. That's like, I'm gonna make this, what can I do to make this better? And I still because that's the way I step back, but I'm like, I need you to be accountable and own your wins and your mistakes. And I still do the same thing today. Like if I screw up, like at our all team meeting, we'll make sure like everyone will hear a certain thing. And that, I've had people, some ego times would be like, doesn't that make you look weak I'm like, no. It actually takes more confidence to be able to be like, I'm totally sorry. And it shows people that you care, not as like a hack, it's like, because you really do. And then that, it like, that builds the unity.
Yeah. And
then you see other people I've had on my team will do something and I watch them take accountability in front of the whole team to something that they didn't have to do that, but they knew because they had seen me, and it's just like that right thing starts to become more your culture too.
Totally. Building a culture is such a cool organic thing that happens, and it's all these little things. I was thinking of one when you were telling that story about how I'm a big believer in public praise, private reprimands.
Yes.
So
yes.
Always.
That's in my book.
Great. When somebody does something good, like give them all the credit.
Yes.
Like don't take the credit yourself, even if you were largely responsible.
Yes.
Because find someone who is second most responsible and say he did this.
Because it's helping you already. Your company's winning.
I'm winning. Credit is free.
Yeah.
And so give credit to people. Make them feel proud of the work that they did.
Absolutely.
But then if somebody messes up, like never publicly humiliating them. Always like taking them aside and saying, you got to change this behavior. And if it can't change, we're going to have to deal with it.
Yes. I learned that the hard way.
Yeah. It's just, that just breeds nothing but bad feelings.
Yeah.
Negativity when you dress people down in front of others. And you see a lot of ego-centered bosses do that all the time.
You do.
They thrive on that kind of shame and like sort of stripping employees of their dignity, which is just miserable. And that's where there's no sense of service there.
There's no unity.
You got to treat them like human beings.
Yeah. They're driving them off of fear versus where your culture was the opposite, where it was like, because you weren't saying I stepped back and they were all lazy and did nothing. You were like, no, they still worked their butt off, like very, very hard.
The more I stepped back, the harder they worked.
They worked hard.
Because they took ownership of it.
Yes. Yeah. And it wasn't out of fear that I'm going to
I was going to charge in and like, dress them down.
Yeah.
That's the worst.
But it's
worst kind of leadership. But it's the most common.
Unfortunately, it is, or it's been maybe the most common that we've seen represented. Because what I have found is I've got to know more and more people behind the scenes that run really big companies, like upper levels in AT&T and stuff. They care like the way you and I do. Now, trust, I've met some that don't.
The sad thing is, I think in a lot of big companies, you get down to middle management and it's like harder for the culture to drip down.
It's trickier.
And so most people are going to be ego driven and managed by fear, and most people don't like their boss, you know? So it's kind of a cancer in business that I hope all these people and you getting the word out like just gets people to realize, people who are like kind of on the bottom rung should realize they deserve better and they can have better.
Yeah.
And they shouldn't have to be dealing with a lack of dignity or public humility or a boss who leads by fear or who has an ego. It's just not something we need to tolerate.
Yeah, and I think it should be inspiring for everyone to know whatever you're doing, you're not only impacting by what your company is doing, by what you're creating, but this leadership is a special thing. That it's really something that I keep it. Trust me, I've had nights where I've been in tears, where I've gone, we go through some crap too, but it's like such an honor and a privilege to be in that of like, and I'm not saying this in an egotistical way, but like lives you can help change and stuff and step back and see that. And that was a part of owning a business that I just never knew would become something that was just so special and rewarding.
Yeah, you don't think of that. When you're chasing your passion and you just want to start something, you realize you're in this whole other soup.
Yeah.
Where you're like leading people, man, because I never signed up for that. Like I just wanted to make comedy.
Because we don't know. Yeah, you don't know.
And,
you learn along the way.
Right.
And I think that should be good news, like for everyone to know that, because they could read this and be like, well, Scott knows, but that's great, but you learn so much.
Yeah.
I mean, you stepped back, obviously, but I know that you learned tons of trial and error, and even that reprimanding people in private, I learned that the wrong way it was the person that ended up being fired, but one day I was just like tons of stuff, it built up and I was just like did it in front of everyone, and he was wrong what he was doing, but I went into and I realized, crap, like I always say the golden rule, I would not have wanted. So I went in, first of all, I apologized one-on-one to him, but then I did it in front of the whole team because he got I did that in front of them, and so I wanted them all to see. But since then, and that's what I'm constantly teaching my leader and stuff, the leaders that I'm helping under me too, is to learn the exact same type thing. Like you don't do that in front of everyone. You pull them, do a quick one-on-one, and you have that, and it builds that trust too. Like you're not just doing like a generic write-up or something.
Yeah, now you're giving them a high standard to live up to, as opposed to creating bad blood.
Yeah.
So much more of a motivator.
It builds that unity to a whole new level. So, well, hey, this has been awesome.
Super awesome.
I definitely appreciate. I love going and seeing you speak yesterday.
Yeah, it was great to have you there.
It was really cool, and then spending time today, and I'm pumped up to see like what you keep doing. Like, what's next?
Yeah. Like I said, I just launched this comedy business school course, which is pretty big, doing more online courses. I'll keep doing more books, and who knows, like it's kind of wide open, whatever. I'm sort of at that phase in my career now where I kind of achieved all I wanted to achieve in comedy.
Yeah.
And now I'm in a new chapter where I'm teaching people how to do comedy, and so I'm a little more whimsical about what I do. And so if I discover a new passion that I want to chase, I'll totally do that.
Yeah.
And maybe this business, this How to Write Funny business, can, be let free to fly at some point.
Yeah.
And I'll start something else. I don't know. But it's a fun time.
It is, and like any of that, I love how there's levels to it all. Like, no, I don't believe we're not just meant to be just one thing. It's like you do something that leads to this, that leads to that. Because you never would have known when you're doing The Onion that I'll be writing a book for entrepreneurs and talking on leadership. You know what I mean? Like years and years later. But from everything that you've learned, it's like you're giving back by doing that.
Yeah.
Because so many people don't have a clue. Like,
yeah, and they ask. I go to these conferences and they all ask me, like, how did you do it? How do you, how do you find good people? How do you find the best people in your industry? It's like, okay, I guess I'll write it down.
And thank God you did, yeah, because there's a big need for it, because there's just so much crap out there that's too much theory-based.
Yeah, this book is very much like a personal story interwoven with business advice. So it's like the story of how the Onion was built, and then, like I said, comparisons to these other companies in different areas doing the same stuff. And yeah, it's so great to tell your personal story and know that it's resonating with people. And
yeah,
it was a #1 new release on Amazon, which is great.
That's cool.
And to know that people are getting some benefit out of it. It might be helping some other people start companies a little more easily, maybe shave some years off of the journey.
Yeah,
that's always helpful.
Oh yeah,
I read a lot of business books, and I listened to a lot of audio tapes back in the day. Jay Abraham, I mean.
Yeah.
And Tony Robbins, Earl Nightingale, stuff like that. So valuable.
Yeah.
So to be able to give a little back and provide sort of like newer, updated information for people with some wacky stories. It's a college humor publication, so there's a lot of funny, wacky stories.
Well, that's what makes
about
it great.
Kids being wild, Yeah. It's fun.
It makes it more fun to read than just like, here's the 10 principles.
Exactly.
That's
which
what
I could have
do.
done, like Good to Great. It's a great book, but it's just like pretty like straight principles.
Yeah. You put yourself into it and everything you do. I have stick figures in my other. I read your something like one of your first ones started with a stick figure and
my comic strip.
The story of you started with me like that. I love, I'm trying to wrap up, but you used that word whimsical. I love that word because years into having Dreamshine, like I used to like to just do little random like in class I wouldn't be paying attention. I would just be drawing these little random stick figure stuff and just dumb things. And one morning I just started early in the morning. I had a little journal. I was listening to things. I started writing some stuff, and I just started doing a little stick figure drawing of this guy named Solid Dude. And there was like a mountain, and it said like hard times, adversity, and like hard work. And Mr. Solid Dude was standing on greener grass. And then on the other side I had Mr. Mediocrity Face, and like it was arrows that went in circles because he just keeps going in circles and goes nowhere, and he was in the land of mediocrity. And then Solid Dude on the other side, and he's like, I'll be damned, the grass is greener on the other side. That led to my whole book, and that's exact cool. Picture is like still on the front.
That's cool.
When I worked with the publisher, I'm like, we're putting that the way I have it, don't like make it look better, don't, because it started like that with that little pencil drawing.
Nice.
And I took a picture of it and like posted it on Twitter, and that people could have been like, this is the dumbest thing. I had no idea, but that like kind of started taking off in a cool way, and I'm like, oh wow,
cool.
But who the heck would have known that would have led to everything else,
Yeah, you don't ever know. Just following your whims is wonderful.
Yes, and I'm preaching to the choir because
that's what I do.
This guy has taken it to a mind-blowing. You have to go see Scott speak any chance that you possibly can, because I didn't even have time to get into like so many other stories where he talked about it was either China or Japan getting a hold of some of their stories and thinking they were real, and the sexiest man of the year. You have to go see him
crazy stuff.
Is it in any of your books? You sure?
A lot of that stuff is in the book. Yeah.
Okay, then I'm not even going to tell you. You have to get the book, because just those 2 stories alone are. I was there and I was like tearing up, laughing. Good. It was good. The kids loved it. So, thank you so much for being here. And listen, everyone, that Scott said it so well. Like, be whimsical, and also talent. You're not just born with talent. It's about putting in the effort, and you have to keep going through terrible. That's okay. You're gonna suck at first, and that's the only way to become amazing. So never settle, never give up, and keep elevating beyond.